Nell'episodio di oggi ho avuto il piacere di conversare con due figure molto particolari. Jayna Devani direttamente da OpenAI, l'azienda madre di ChatGPT. Jayna è Education Lead per OpenAI, quindi si occupa di guidare la parte educativa dell'azienda. E dall'altro lato Antonio Pisante, fondatore di Yellowtech, una realtà italiana che opera sempre nell'ambito dell'intelligenza artificiale, in particolare nel guidare la trasformazione che sta avvenendo con questi mezzi a livello educativo. Il tema della puntata è infatti il presente e il futuro dell'istruzione e come questa sia influenzata dall'AI, qualcosa che dato il mio lavoro mi sta molto a cuore e sono quindi davvero contento di aver avuto questa opportunità. La conversazione è in inglese, chiaramente. Buona visione. Jayna and Antonio, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. So, Jayna, you are Jayna Devani. You are OpenAI's education lead for Europe, North Africa, and Middle East. We all know OpenAI mostly for ChatGPT. Antonio Pisante, you are the founder and CEO of Yellowtech, an Italian company that guides AI transformation for public administration, schools, and companies. And me, I am a former memory athlete and also as a founder of an educational company, Accademia Athena, I am deeply interested into the future of education. And when we talk about the future of education, we cannot ignore AI. That plays a central role, definitely a central role. And so today's subject is Gen AI for the future of education and for the future of learning. And let me tell you, you are the perfect host, the perfect guest for this subject. So I'm happy to have you here. So Jayna, what brings you here in Italy?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really special to be in Italy. I think that, as you said, AI is really rapidly changing education. And in my work in the education team, we are really working with the innovators and educational institutions, students, teachers who are at the forefront of building amazing ways to reimagine work and learning with AI. So, what brings me to Italy is all of that innovation is happening so much across Italy, across Europe. And we have really been very lucky to form really meaningful partnerships with educational institutions in Italy. We have a framework agreement with CRUI, which represents all Italian higher education institutions, 1.2 million students and 200,000 faculty and staff. And we partner with many leading schools in Italy, such as Bocconi, where we have a really foundational partnership which spans both research as well as providing access to AI tools. And our hope in doing these partnerships is that we will learn from the best and we will learn how use cases in teaching and learning are really supporting teachers and students. And we really want to amplify that at OpenAI across the rest of the world. So we're here on the ground, kind of listening, learning, and taking all of that back into the way we develop our learning platform, the way we engage with teachers and the wider community, and all kind of in benefit of our mission, which is really to provide equitable access to intelligence.
That's super inspiring. I have one first question for both of you. Let's start from you, Jayna. In your perspective, what are the major shifts that we are seeing today in the way we both learn and teach?
Yeah, I think if we, take a step back and we think about why all of this shift is happening, one of the reasons that we talk so much about ChatGPT in education is that it is already becoming a very large learning platform. So it may be, surprising to some to know, and I was definitely surprised when I first saw this, that one of the biggest use cases of ChatGPT is learning, and the number one user group of ChatGPT out of the 800 million people that use it every week are students. And so we are already seeing huge potential in these large language models to provide access to intelligence. So when we think about the way that we're seeing the shift in teaching and learning, I think fundamentally it's that students are going to ChatGPT seeking information because they're curious. And over time, what we are working on at OpenAI is finding ways to essentially make ChatGPT a more useful, personalized, adaptive tutor. So our hope is that one day, anywhere across the world, any student can access ChatGPT and use it to learn about any topic, and it will speak their language. It will adapt to their learning style. So it might be more visual in helping them kind of picture concepts. It is an endlessly patient mentor or tutor or coach. And I think what we'd like to do really is take that feedback and learn from these students and use this to make sure that AI actually supports their learning outcomes and enhances their critical thinking skills.
Thank you very much for that. And Antonio, what do you think are the most significant shifts that you see in your work?
Yeah. Yeah, with Yellow Tech, we collaborated with more than 500 high schools in Italy. And so we have seen hands-on firsthand, we have seen the impact that AI is having on students and on teachers. What you've seen, starting from the students, I really much think that OpenAI is in a good path for personalized tutoring because I've seen that students are using this for having personalized tutoring. So they now can go at their own pace. They can integrate their knowledge. For the first time, they have an AI tutor on scale. So personalized tutoring has always been an effective way of learning. This is proven by science way before AI. The thing is, it's never been a democratic way of teaching. Not everybody had access to it. Before AI, it was an elitarian thing. Only people who can afford it could do it. Now, instantly, everybody can have a personal tutor, an AI tutor that can support, can adapt to the pace, can adapt to the knowledge. And this is massive. I really believe we are in the early days of this. AI is great, but there's a lot of steps. Maybe we talk later about the direction we can go, but there's a lot of steps we can still do. It's the early days. The impact is huge, but it's still early days. And in terms of teachers, I also seen teachers using AI a lot. It's a bit different. Students usually they use it already, and we have to work on awareness with them, on letting them understand limitations and how to use the tool. For teachers, usually they don't use it because they think it's something far away from them, it's something hard to do. But when we show it and when we show the real benefits and when we show how easy it's to use these kind of tools, they start to use it instantly and they start to get benefits out of it. Mostly the benefits that I've seen in teachers is on one hand, general productivity, so all the tasks that they do at home, like preparing classes or doing research or preparing slides, exercises, correcting exercises, this can be done much faster and they have more time for quality teaching. And also the impact on the quality of teaching, like preparing better material, doing better research and all this kind of stuff. And lastly, another impact that I've seen, perhaps a negative one, I mean, it's a byproduct of AI, it's the impact that now it's been on the assessment, specifically on homeworks. Like before, we used to do homework for students to test their skills, giving like you can do write something or do exercises at home. Now with AI, this doesn't make much sense because students can use AI to do that. I mean, there are a lot of ways to solve this, and the first thing, but in the future, I see many other solutions. But the thing here now, teachers they are changing the way they do homework, so they do assessments to oral defense or doing in-class tasks or doing tasks that integrate AI in the process. But for sure, it's changing. They cannot use the homework they were using before.
Yeah, I want to keep talking about teachers. So, Jane, I would like to know, in your point of view, how do you see the role of teachers evolving with AI increasingly supporting students directly?
Very much remaining at the center of the classroom and really supporting very human skills. I think that when I think about the work that we in particular do as an education team, I think it's more actually about supporting teachers and, as Antonio said, helping them in some cases catch up to where students are. And students are always the first adopters of these kind of new technologies. And so I think for us, we are supporting schools, universities, ministries of education to help provide a perspective in where the technology is going. So we sit down regularly with groups of teachers and we share with them, what's coming next in these models. We share best practices and great examples of what teachers are doing already in the classroom. And our hope is that we are building this community of builders, of innovators, so we can bring the rest of the world along. And teachers are doing amazing things every day. I completely echo Antonio that we are seeing some really fascinating uses of AI. I think generally we see this in terms of it's being used very much as a productivity tool and to reduce some of this admin that teachers face day to day and allowing them to spend more time in front of students. So the lesson plans, supporting kind of slide creation, things like this. Also, in terms of building entirely new classroom experiences. And I think that as these tools are lowering the barrier to entry so that any teacher without any technical experience can start building apps or building kind of assistants in a classroom, we are seeing more and more of that. So one of my favorite examples is Professor Vitor Lima, who's a digital marketing professor at ESCP in Paris. And he uses the voice mode of ChatGPT to essentially act as a feedback provider in live classrooms. So he invites groups of students up, they're pitching an idea. The AI assistant is providing feedback and he's integrating that into his overall assessment. And he built this entire assistant himself. He provided the instructions of what we call a custom GPT, so an assistant you can build in GPTs, in ChatGPT. And it's been a pretty innovative way. I think that he's been able to include AI, but not make it the dominant part of a classroom, but rather just one important tool. And then the third, which is equally important, beyond productivity, beyond bringing it into a classroom, is just to engage with it critically. I think that teachers are not embracing AI tools completely uncritically. They have many important perspectives on how it might be used to enhance pedagogy, the limitations of it. But the fact that they're grappling with this means that we're able to see that teachers are leading the way when explaining how to bring AI into a classroom, because it's certainly not OpenAI's mandate to share how and when and why AI should be used. I think what we're trying to do is build this general purpose technology, is to build access to intelligence, lower the barriers. But then we really want to work with the experts, the teachers themselves, these other really critical stakeholders in education, and co-design this approach with them.
Thank you very much. And I want to go deeper into that because I strongly believe that a fundamental part of teaching is having trust in your teachers and in the path they have taken so that you can kind of replicate it with confidence. And I'm thinking with a certain use of AI, that this is not what you are describing, there is the risk to undermine this part. So my question is to both of you. Let's start from you, Antonio. How can we balance the efficiency and intelligence of AI tools with the need for empathy, mentorship, and human connection in learning? How can we balance that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I really much believe, and I go Jane on this, that humans should always be in the loop, and they should always be the owner of this and direct AI to serve students and teachers better. How do we do this? Like, did we build trust on the educational system over time, over history? There's competence. So the teachers are very competent and students trust them. There's care. You know that the educator is caring about you, and so you trust them. There's integrity. They don't have hidden goals. Their goal is to it's for the students to learn. And there's transparency. You can see what they do, and all of this should be replicated also in an AI system. So an AI which has human in the loop, human that is the last escalation point in which AI can go, human that can manage edge cases, human that can be the mentor of the students, can manage all the relational part, the psychological part, the motivational part. Then there's how do we build the integrity of this? I think the data shouldn't be collected. The students should have always, or the families always, the possibility to opt out of the training data for this data to be saved. And there's the transparency part. I believe every AI that is built in school must have system prompts visible to all students and families. System prompts are basically the prompts that for the first prompts that AI reads to be programmed. And all this must be read and must be visible. With all these principles in mind, I believe we can go into direction in which institutions, schools, and the students and parents can really trust AI being in the process, supporting them for their learning experience. I think the major AI providers are doing big steps into building also products that go into the direction of helping students, like not giving the answers, but helping getting into the answers, and they go into that direction. I think we're still in the early days, right? Much more can be done into integrating in the system, supporting more, giving more transparency, integrating better, being inside the loop between students and teachers. Today, teachers doesn't know anything that happens between the students and the chatbot, right? This can be integrated much more in the future to have more context and to give teachers better tools to help the students.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I really like the point you were making about there needs to be these safe spaces that are created in institutions. And I think, in our team where we are off engaging with institutions in Italy, in Oxford, in Harvard, across the world, we are really seeing that, where we are best placed to help is really there to share what a successful top-down and bottom-up approach looks like. So both supporting at a very kind of executive layer, helping leaders of these universities who are really grappling with these very, very philosophical challenges, very existential challenges. We are there, I think, really to share our view on, why we're building this technology. We really do fundamentally believe that it can support human cognition. It is there to enhance first and foremost human intelligence. And so what we're really trying to share at that level is how do you put a right kind of strong governance layer in place? How do you set a vision, which ultimately goes back to what you're really trying to do, which is benefit students and help students go out into civil society and flourish and be great, good people. And then also, how do you really start to set some clear goals and work with, the very best innovative partners out there? There might be OpenAI, there might be others. And then all the way through that feeds down, I think, then to that bottom up layer, which is us going out on the front lines. Like we love going to schools and being there and supporting kind of builder type events where we're seeing these teachers learn and build with us on how to introduce AI tutors into a classroom or, any different kind of application that might support the learning process. And as Antonio said, we're also, along with many other AI companies, really making strides in doing that ourselves. So recently we relaunched, for example, study mode, which is a different mode of ChatGPT, which instead of providing an answer very quickly, is actually built on pedagogical principles like scaffolding, the Socratic method, to help students engage with some of that friction during the learning process. And so now, a student at Oxford can kind of go into study mode, and if they're looking to really engage more deeply with a concept, and they don't have access to a tutor at that moment because it's 1 a.m. and they're in their dorm. They have access now to intelligence, and we're only seeing these things enhanced because eventually there'll be professors who share their own knowledge, their own material to kind of provide a much richer contextual understanding when a student is asking that question. And our hope is really that this scales way beyond this small handful of innovative institutions, and the more we can build and the quicker we can build, what we really want is, I think, to support every university and to support every place of learning, in particular, because I think when we think about learning, we mean learning at an abstract layer. We mean your entire personal development journey, all the way through from being a school student to being a university student or an apprentice, all the way through to lifelong learning and, continually picking up skills, which we all need to do given how quickly AI is shifting, the working world.
Yeah, we will come back to lifelong learning shortly. But I was thinking, since you are guys talking about supporting human cognition, which is super inspiring, but something came to my mind. In the world of effective learning, there is, as you know, this concept of desirable difficulty, meaning that the hard steps, the mentally demanding steps that you make while learning, these are precisely the most effective ones, the ones you cannot skip. With a certain use of AI, I see the risk of losing this principle because we, as human beings, we are mentally lazy. So it's a strong temptation to let AI do the hard work for us. How can we avoid that?
Yeah, I think we definitely are seeing, more and more of this debate around, how can we make sure that AI, it's being used every day as a tool, students are using it in the millions. How do we make sure it supports learning? And I think definitely being in the education team, one of the biggest goals we have is to advance this knowledge and this understanding and get very actively involved in this research. And so, it's very true that, we're seeing, there are ways you can measure gains in using AI through things like productivity and time saved. But the really interesting part for education is to think about, as you said, the efficacy of these models. And so we have a very big research effort underway to start conducting some of the world's first longitudinal studies in understanding how AI can improve and affect critical thinking, with the belief that we think it can. It's obviously very hard to stand up these studies. You need really expertise on multiple fronts. We, for example, have a partnership with Estonia through the Ministry of Education and a foundation called AI Leap, where one of their main goals has been in providing this tool access to students, which they're doing at a kind of nationwide scale. How do we actually make sure that these models are useful and effective for learning? And in that way, we work with a number of research partners, so Stanford, local universities in Estonia, and a kind of collective forum to start tackling some of these questions. And really, there we're looking for expertise in cognitive neuroscience, pedagogical experts, parents, teachers, everyone to really join this conversation and to share with us what are the desired behaviors we're looking for in these models. And as you said, it might be friction, it might be enhanced motivation, it might be curiosity. And then how do we actually make those behaviors more prevalent in these models? And what are some of the reasons or tweaks we can make to kind of support that process? And so study mode, which I mentioned earlier, is one of our first research previews into that work, where we evaluated the prompt of study mode with a board of experts, and we've been evaluating it and testing it, and are happy to say that some of the very early research findings have been similar to some of the broader literature out there, that when you use these models in targeted ways, it can enhance the learning process. But we have so much more work to do in this space. I think this is a huge priority for us, for many other AI companies. Our goal is very fundamentally to advance learning, and to do that with this group of experts, amazing education systems like Estonia, like many others around the world, obviously the US. And I think that we'll be sharing a lot more in that space, hopefully soon.
Yeah, thank you. And Antonio, as you said, you run a project of AI adoption into more than 500 schools. Did you encounter some problems related to that? So, students using AI in a lazy mode?
Yeah, very much, very much. I mean, I've been in classes myself, dialogating with students, and you see many of them that are that okay. There's ChatGPT, or there's another tool. I can just make all the exercises and I don't have to do anything. There's the first temptation, and there's a real risk. Um, I believe it's a problem. So how what do we do with this? So in one direction, Jayna was mentioning the study mode from ChatGPT and all the other from the other AI labs. They are trying to do alternate versions of chatbots that really can help students, and they can preserve that effort being put into studying, into exercises. That really helps with that, and I think that's an amazing direction that students appreciate, parents appreciate, and the school appreciates. We're in the early days. What I see today is that when I go to schools don't provide this kind of chatbots to students. But I've seen parents doing this. Many times parents come to me and they're like, okay, I've done this modified version of a chatbot that I give to my son to study because the books are already in there, because it's programmed not to answer something. So it's because already uses this kind of alternate versions of chatbots. So parents are jumping in, and I think eventually the institutions will, jump in on scale. Another topic is the assessments. I was mentioning before, like assessments today are widely used to assess knowledge of students at a certain point of time on a certain topic. Assessments are shown by research to be an effective way of learning. So, I mean, we should keep it somehow, unless we have something better. But now that we keep it, we should adapt assessments with time, and adapt assessments with time within the time of the AI, preserving the effort that students put into solving assessments or solving homework means being more process oriented and less output oriented. If in the homework I say, okay, just give me the output of this homework, which can be the result of an exercise, or the translation of a text or something like this, that's just the output. And then the output is you can do that with AI and you lose that kind of effort. But if you focus on the process, give me the process that you use to get there, like all the steps that you have done, the prompts that if you use an AI, give me the prompts, the dialogue that you did, all the steps, all the failed steps that you have done. Focusing on the process allows to see all the efforts that the student have done. And this change in what you assess actually preserves the efforts, the difficulty that the students put into studying and exercise.
Yeah, and actually, just to add to that, because I love that you mentioned parents, I think that we are, often we think about AI as being the only way that students are learning, but of course that isn't true. This is a much bigger community effort, a social effort. It always has been, and so beyond, the kind of the research that we're doing, I think it's an excellent point that this needs to be something that the whole community engages with, and I think that we're also very excited to lean into that community and hearing what you're seeing, and also hoping to start collecting more of those stories around the world and sharing those broadly. So recently, we also launched something called the OpenAI Academy, which is a big sort of freely available set of online resources. And it really tries to pull in some of these amazing stories of what individuals are doing who are intrinsically motivated, who have started to kind of think and engage with these questions. And we're hoping to kind of share out what they're doing as much as possible. So we have a lot of features there, for many different reasons, for education specifically, on how do you start navigating AI in schools? What are some of the good ways to prompt? How do you start, introducing that friction back into the learning process? And we're also very lucky as well, I think, to feature some incredible faculty from all over the world. From Italy, there's a wonderful Professor Antonio Pisante at Pisa, who's been sharing some brilliant ways of using AI. Like one example is just getting a whole load of lecture notes from everywhere and boiling them down and transcribing them with the use of AI to kind of more simply help students engage with material. But I think, yeah, we're seeing this kind of this amazing innovation happen everywhere, from parents who are involved now, from teachers themselves. And I think it's that collective effort which will then mean that students are fully supported through this process. They come to engaging with a tool like AI with the right framework, with the right guidance and support. And then that hopefully continues and they can continue to engage with the tool in that way as one part of a much bigger, broader learning experience.
Yeah, and if we expand that, we can talk about lifelong learning that you mentioned before. And so, Antonio, how do you think AI can reshape lifelong learning and adults reskilling or for navigating new careers?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. With Yellow Tech, we also work with companies in which we work into the upskilling of grown-ups in most of the cases. So with adult people that have to integrate AI in their jobs. I mean, apart from integrating AI in the jobs, how AI is impacting learning, one thing I see is using AI into actual tasks. So before, what would happen before AI is that there's you cannot adapt the education material to your actual tasks, to what they're actually doing. So we have been using to do courses, general courses that are the same for everyone, for a group of people. They are not specifically tailor-made to you. What happens today is that you can have an AI actually teaching some concepts on your task that you're doing, on your goal, on your pace. So this is very powerful. I've been seeing courses, or like general courses, one size fits all courses, to be way less effective in the team of AI. Say I want to learn about hosting a podcast. Before I would do a course about hosting a podcast. Today I can have an AI copilot helping me in all the steps. Okay, I have to pick the microphone. I have to pick the guest. I have to open a YouTube account and whatever. And AI helps me with my knowledge, with my prior knowledge, step by step. And this is true for almost every discipline. So AI being a copilot and helping along the way in the actual task is very powerful. And so what this brings is that there's way less gatekeeping than before. Before, you should study formally, perhaps courses or actual degrees to get to a master level of something. Today you can learn much quicker directly in your tasks. And so it's very different way of learning, and there's way less gatekeeping. People don't need actual formal courses to get there. So I believe that it's more important than before to have this curiosity, to have courage to go there and just try to do stuff using AI along the way on the actual tasks, and not waiting for the degree to happen or the formal courses to be done. And this is very important for adults that have that awareness to get this concept and do these things.
I really appreciate it because to be a good teacher, you need to have many skills, and one of that is adapting to the students, adapting to the person you have in front of you. Because it's true that from a psychological point of view and from a cognitive point of view, we are pretty similar to each other, but from an emotional point of view, we can be really different because we have different interests, we have different rhythms. So it's fundamental that even with AI, we maintain this aspect of tailor-made learning, and maybe we can even improve it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so true what you were saying about just being courageous and jumping in without waiting for a textbook to teach you how to use AI, which I think often holds a lot of people back. OpenAI recently crossed 1 million business customers. And so we've been really working very deeply with businesses similar to Yellow Tech and thinking about how do we, support all of this, this kind of disruption that's happening in the workforce. And I see often three very big things that hold companies back. And the first is placing all of their AI bets in just one place. And I think too often we see that, AI is like the realm of the technical team, or there's a sort of AI czar, and only they are allowed to decide what gets built with AI. The second is just giving everyone access to a tool and hoping that solves everything. Like, oh, I switched on an AI feature in, my existing productivity suite, and now I've done AI. And then the last is very much Antonio's point that, people are waiting for perfection. They're waiting for a textbook, or they're waiting for someone to tell them how to do it. And I really like, the approach here that I've actually seen more in the education sector, being more close to that, which is saying fast is better than perfect, and just to kind of iterate and not wait. And so we're seeing that definitely in some of the more innovative companies we're working with, like Moderna, for example, who've given AI access to all, I think, 5,000 of their employees rather than concentrating in one place, and have identified very clear high ROI use cases or high ROI initiatives that they're going to invest in and start with. And they did this like 2 years ago, I think, even maybe more. They were already thinking about some of these things and not waiting to kind of catch up with everyone else.
Yeah, you need to start before you think you are ready.
Absolutely, like ready, fire, aim.
I have one last question for you guys. So, how do you imagine the classroom in 10 years from now, and what role does AI play in it?
I think the classroom, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I think the classroom will still very much have humans at the forefront of it. I think that I imagine potentially a world where we have more figured out in terms of how AI and how students are going to peaceably interact, and I think that's going to be very much driven and guided by a teacher. And so I really see new kind of collaborative environments being opened up. I think we're going to lean very hard into adaptive, personalized learning pathways. So a student is particularly curious about a topic from a certain angle. Maybe they're learning about biology, but they have more interest in sport. And so they're asking an AI assistant or a teacher is supporting the use of this to kind of reimagine the concept of photosynthesis, but with a kind of sports analogy. I think sort of more and more of this I see happening with a more teacher guided approach. And I think that really I see these sort of AI native schools, AI native classrooms being joined up into a much bigger community, which is something that, governments are a part of when we're thinking about setting new standards in supporting students, creating, redesigning curriculum, redesigning assessments, setting kind of ethical standards for how to integrate in AI. So teachers, governments, tech companies, supporting using this in kind of these secure, safe spaces. And to that end, for example, at OpenAI, we have a kind of GDPR compliant institution license of ChatGPT called ChatGPT Edu, which is the one that all universities and schools are using around the world. And so in that instance, none of your data is shared outside or used to train OpenAI's models. It has additional functionality. It can integrate into, your LMS or your other tools you're using. And so I think that, these tools are getting better. Our understanding of how to use them and harness them is getting better. And that is being informed by a very global perspective because this is happening everywhere organically. And I think that, really by that point as well, to your earlier point about, will AI support the learning process? I think that that will really start to understand and engage in a much deeper way around how and when to introduce these tools into a classroom.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll try to do my predictions. As Jayna said, we don't have crystal balls.
Yeah, for sure.
I will try to tell my predictions, and I will base my prediction on Italy, which is, of course, where I have the most experience, and will be based on high schools because it's where I have also the most experience, and also I believe AI should impact much less lower levels. So for high schools in Italy, what I've seen today is AI is having already a lot of impact, which is very much based on what's already there on the actual system. So students are using, I mean, the schools is all the same, right? It's been the same after AI. The class size is the same, the teachers are the same, everything is the same, but AI is helping students with their personalized learning, is helping teachers being faster with higher quality of teaching. So it's helping more and more. And what I see is that AI will become better and better in quality. So this help will become always larger. Today, what's holding back to do higher help is for sure the quality of the models, but we know that the trend is pretty clear. They're becoming much more intelligent, faster, and cheaper. Just a short note on this. Like today, students are using mostly language models. They don't even use reasoning models because sometimes they are too slow or they're too costly, right? And this brings to some errors at times that hint trust, and then there's a bad cycle that doesn't let them use AI. But this is something that we're in the direction of solving, right? Because the models are much faster, much cheaper, etc. And then there's context for sure, which is another limiting factor now, which is the chatbots don't know anything about that student. They don't have memory. They don't know the context about the schools. They don't know about the teachers. They don't know about the class. They don't know anything, right? So all this context around the knowledge that the chatbots can have, that the model can have, can be done much better in time to be much more useful for students and teachers. Then of course there's awareness. Today we didn't achieve high AI literacy, which I believe is fundamental to use these tools better. Today, if a student exactly doesn't know a difference between language model, reasoning model, all these kind of things, I think using AI a lot for personal tutoring might be riskful at times. So we need to work on awareness and on literacy as well. But all these things will happen over time, and of course the security, the safeness, all this will happen over time. So I see that these improvements, this help that will happen for students and teachers in one day, it will become so much useful that it will start changing even some fundamental aspects of schools that we have given for granted for all this time. Like, for example, the frontal class, teacher explaining concepts to a class of students. AI might know even better than teachers in time, and teachers can focus on more higher quality kind of activities like directing the AI to do the right stuff, giving the AI personalized learning material to each student. AI can go at their own pace of each student, and all this, the frontal class might become something more outdated that we change over time. Some models like flipped classroom that we have tried in the past in Italy, in some Italian high schools, for example, might become even more relevant because today flipped classroom, so the concept that the student learns at home by himself and then practice at schools with the others, might become even more relevant because when you are at home, you have now a very smart AI tutor that can direct you. And things like assessments also can become obsolete because we don't need anymore when there's a smart AI that can do stuff. he can continuously assess students. We don't need formal assessment one point of time to test skills. So these things that were very eradicated into our thinking, they might become things of the past. And I see this happening in the next 10 years. Then here's the crystal ball time. Let's meet in 10 years and let's see. And then after 10 years or even later, I see even fundamental things might change, like the classroom size, or basic activities of studying, or what you do in schools, like more fundamental things maybe later in time will also change. But for now, I think this help that AI is giving and integrating well in society and working on this is the most important step.
So the whole concept of learning and teaching may be revolutionized, right?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think that so many people in education talk about revolution. I think sometimes I see teachers are tired of it because, there has been centuries and centuries of good teaching practices, and every so often, tech companies come along and want to revolutionize everything. But I think actually, as Antonio said, there are still so many wonderful parts of education we should preserve. I think assessments will still be here in 10 years, so we can write down our bets and we can see what will happen. But I think that the kind of new approach that is now needed, because the barrier to entry for accessing intelligence is here, because we are having to rethink some things that we've done for many years and they may not work. I think hopefully that does lead to rethinking in some big parts of education to continually do what we're here to do, which is to support students and their learning.
Jayna, Antonio, it was a great pleasure to talk with you. I learned a lot. I'm sure my audience learned a lot too. You gave us many hints, so we have a lot to think about and to reflect on. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Grazie.
Grazie.
A voi.